Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is Amory Sutton, and today we're going to be editing on Capture One. Now I've only been using Capture One for about a year now. I used Lightroom and Photoshop for a while, and I've trialed Capture One a few times and I did enjoy it. It was just moving over was a ball ache. However, there was a point where I screwed up my Lightroom catalogue to the point where I lost everything. I couldn't find it. It messed up in my hard drive, and it felt like I might as well start fresh and move on to Capture One. So today we're going to be editing a picture of my gran. My gran's about 82 in this picture, and she is an absolutely lovely woman and someone that everyone should strive for. She's been disabled most of her life, but she's not let that hold her back. She's raised a large family, had a very fulfilling life. She's even appeared in a book, and she succeeded in her lifelong dream to sing at the Royal Albert Hall. She always wanted to do it as a solo, but she managed to do it as a choir, and she said, you know what, I'll take it. So we're going to edit this picture here, and we're going to try and get it to something that's looking like this here. So, the reason I'm doing it this way is I believe editing is very subjective. So yes, you can over-edit and thing, but one thing I have noticed on Instagram at the moment is over-editing seems to be very popular, because most people that are looking at photographs don't really understand editing. You don't understand subtlety and stuff like that. And if you look at this, it is slightly over sharpened, and you can tell that in the hair. Could have probably done with a bit of a noise reduction in the background, but this is how I wanted the image to look. I wanted this aesthetic in the image, and it looked really good when I printed it out. And my dad, who this is his mother, has a copy, and anyone else in the family that wants a copy of it as well. So we'll go to this. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to go to the exposure, and what we're going to do is just bring that up until we feel like about there. And what I'm going to do is just bring the highlights down so I get a bit more detail back in the left of the face. And I'm just going to bring the shadows up about there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in an emptied adjustment layer. I'm going to call this right face. Now using the brush here, we're just going to paint in very subtly here. And what I'm going to do is try find that down. I'm not using a tablet, by the way, I'm just using a roller mouse. I'm just going to bring that. So if I go that's way too far. So I just want it subtly brighter. So for example, if I turn this off, it just balances out the face a bit more, because when I did this shoot, I was in a rush to get there and I forgot my lighting kit. So she was sat in a chair, and I brought a lamp that's usually behind a chair around about here next to her to kind of give this side lighting effect. And I knew that once I saw the pictures, I'd know how I'd be able to overcome the editing. And that's one thing about digital that is handy, is once you get used to it and used to your camera and the raw files, if you know your editor, you know how the pictures are going to look after you're edited. And it'd be the same for someone who's an analog photographer. The moment you see that negative, you know how you're going to sort it out in the darkroom, or what you're going to do. And like Ansel Adams, he was very big in pre-visualization, where he would know exactly, based on the settings he was going to put in his camera, in his head he already had the entire path from when he pressed that shutter with those settings right through to when the final print was made. And I think that's something that everyone can learn from him, either analog or digital. So we've got this now, and I'm quite happy with that. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to do a new filled layer. I'm going to call this skin tone. And then what we're going to do is just go to colour. I'm going to make sure it's on skin tone here. Now I'm just going to click this. And I'm just going to find, I think that'll do there. And it'll bring up the range here, and if I change this, it's very subtle. I just want a bit more pink, and I can saturate it up a bit, darken it a bit, but you'll notice it's affecting these bits here as well. So don't want it too red, so probably about there. Desaturate, not really a fan of that. No, I like the contrast in there. Okay, so if I click View Selected Solid Grain, you see how View Selected Color Range. You see how this is selected and this is selected and parts of your hair selected. That's areas that are being affected by the colour. That's not something we want. So what we're going to do is we are going to click on the eraser. And because this was a full, if I click here, it's going to erase this. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring this up. We're just going to cut out all the bits. Just gently here. And I'm just going to make it smaller, just so I can go in and tidy up the edges a little bit. In my day job, I do some for the company I work for. We are mainly a retailer, but we also do photo retouching and restorations. Now, I'm not the main guy that does it, but I do a few. I'm just going to zoom in here because I don't want the lips to change. It'll make the lips very uniform against the skin, and that's not really what we want. So I'm going to drag that out a little bit here. And I'm just going to bring this back out to fit. So then if I turn this on and off, skin very, very subtly changes, but nothing else in the actual image is changed. So next what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of a few blemishes. So I'm just going to do a healing layer. I'm just going to call this blemish. Now I'm not a retoucher in that I want to get rid of and change everything to a person, but I don't mind changing things that people are never really going to notice were there in the first place. I think that should do it. Yeah. So, you got that. So my next one is I'm going to do what I like to do is it's a trick I found, and when I first started doing editing I would do it over the top. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an empty layer. I'm going to call this Darken Eyes. And what we're going to do is zoom really, really far in, not that far. About there should do it. And we've got our mask brush selected. I'm going to make this as small as possible. Now, I used to do this really, really, really over the top, and I was happy with it. But looking back at some of the old edits I used to do, I was never quite happy enough. So if I go here and bring the exposure down, I'm just going to darken it. What I actually want to do, I'm just going to move over to the other eye. You can see that there is a slight ring around my grand's eye. My eyes have it more pronounced, but it just adds. So if I just minimise now, and then what I'm going to do is just bring the exposure down. So that's ridiculous. So what I'm just going to do, probably about there. So if I turn that on and off, just gives a bit of definition to the eyes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another empty adjustment layer. An empty and a filled. Empty basically means there's no mask in it, and filled means there is a mask that is covers it, and then you can control where you take away the mask. So we're going to do lighten. Nice. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just make this a bit bigger. This bit here, we're just going to paint in just around the eye. And over here. just going to minimize that. And then what we're going to do is just bring the exposure up. Now I could do that, and she looks as scary as my grand can be, but we're just going to very subtly just add a bit of contrast. So if you see the difference, just adds a bit of pop to them. So the next thing we're going to do now is we're going to do a filled adjustment layer, and this is going to be Sharpen. Now I like to sharpen images to the point where I get a real nice pop in them, and it might be over sharpening for some people. So I'm going to go. If I go up too far, it's going to be too far. But then what I'm going to do is bring my radius up to about 1, and I'm going to bring my threshold down to about 0.5. And if you see in the here, there is just a slight pop, which if I zoom into about 50%. Just gives it a bit of a pop. So after that, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to add a new filled layer, and we're going to call this contrast. I just want to add a bit of pop with the contrast. So what I'm going to do is go back to my exposure, but I'm going to go down to curves. I'm just going to bring this up a little bit, just a tad, and I'm just going to bring this down just a little bit. So we have that. Now the great thing about this is I can now turn the opacity down and then just start slowly yo-yoing backwards and forwards until I get to the right one. And I think, yeah, 65% is going to be quite nice. So we're getting quite close to how the original was. If you notice here, there are subtle differences. But I think what I might try and do is I'm just going to do a filled layer. I'm just going to call this saturation. This might be not a layer that survives what I'm about to do. I might just get rid of it completely, but I'm going to go back to colour. And then going to go to basic. And I'm just going to throw saturation up a little bit. Just so that it's over, and then what I can do is just control the opacity. It gives me that extra level. Yeah, it's very subtle, but I think that's going to be it. And I think that gives me my final image. So if I just quickly cut everything back, so that's the original image. And just to recap what we did was we just brightened the we started off the exposure on the background, and then what we did was we just brightened the right of the face just to even it out a bit. We subtly add a bit of pink to the skin tone, removed some blemishes, we darkened the outer of her eyes, lightened the inner bit of her eyes, we had a sharpening, contrast and saturation. And that's the final image. And I'm quite happy with that. I think what I might do is just go here, yeah, I might just check the light fall off a bit. Yeah, I'll just do that a little bit. I'm quite happy with that, and that's how I edit portraits. I love Capture One because it allows me to break down the layers like on Photoshop and control the opacity of each layer. But I'm going to be doing more portrait edits in the future, maybe some landscape ones as well, and we'll go from there. But this was a very intentional portrait shoot I had with my gran. I knew that I was going to take a portrait shoot, knew I was coming to take some pictures, and another picture I walked away with. I took quite a few pictures, and I walked away with this one as well, in which I told a joke that comes from one of the opening lines of one of my favourite films, which is 20 Days Later, which is, A man and a giraffe walk into a bar. They both get really drunk. Giraffe falls over, man goes to leave. The bartender goes, "Oh, you can't leave that lion there." And he goes, "No, it's not a lion, it's a giraffe." And that was the reaction I got out of it. And I was really, really happy with that picture. I basically put it onto burst mode and just, as I told the joke, press shut down. And yeah, this was again with the Z6 Neptune lens. I originally bought the Neptune lens for a Nikon F, but when I switched over from the Canon ESR to the Z6, I could translate these lenses over, and I think when I buy lenses, I don't look for surgical perfection that a lot of modern camera makers are going for. I like lenses with characteristics. I want character in my photo from the get-go. I don't want to be trying to add character in later on. But yeah, that's how I edit a portrait. And if you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I'll be doing more content around photography and the other things I introduced this channel to. So thank you very much, and goodbye.